Okay, MagLab, welcome to the April MagX talk. And I'm delighted to say that our speaker is Roxanne Hughes and our discussion leader is Julia Smith. Take it, Julia.
All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Roxanne Hughes. Roxanne is the MagLab's director for the Center for Integrated Research and Learning. Roxanne also is a Research Faculty 3 member at the MagLab, and she's affiliated as a faculty member with the FSU College of Education. So in her research program, Roxanne studies the role of formal as well as informal education, but also teaching and mentoring on student STEM identity and on those from underrepresented groups in STEM. Also important to know, Roxanne is very well published. Her research has been published in top-tier science education journals. As an example, I mentioned a journal on research and science teaching. Also, Roxanne has been a co-PI on multiple NSF grants because of her high-profile research, including an NSF Advancing Science and Formal Education grant with the National SciGirls organization. Here she studies the impact of the SciGirls programs on participating girls' STEM identity based on programs as, for example, the program that we have here at the MagLab every summer. It doesn't stop there. Roxanne also takes on a lot of different functions for FSU at large. Among others, she was recently elected to the Faculty Senate Steering Committee, as well as to the FSU President's Council on Diversity, Equity, and Exclusion. And in that capacity, she was taking leadership decisions for the university at large. Also, Roxanne was recently appointed to FSU Institutional Representative for the American Council on Education Women's Network of Florida. And in this capacity, she will support women in leadership development in higher education institutions in Florida, but also nationally. So to summarize, I think I can say that Roxanne is a force to be reckoned with. And with that, I would like to pass the floor to Roxanne and also inform you of our decision that we would like to hold questions for the end of Roxanne's presentation. So at that point, I'll get back with you. Just raise your hand or type in the chat box and I'll go ahead, Roxanne.
Thanks, Julia. So the first thing I have is some audience participation time. So if you want to, if you've got your video on, I love seeing faces, so you're more than welcome, or you can use your any one of the emojis that you have access to. But how many people were aware that developing an educational outreach program is a part of the MagLab's mission? So raise your hand if you were aware of that. Oh, nice. Excellent, excellent. I'm seeing, oh, I got to see a counter of it. And then how many people are currently working on grants that require broader impacts? Hands are staying up. So Searle is here to help. And that's how I pronounce the Center for Integrating Research and Learning, where I am the director. And I have an amazing team of Dr. Kawana Johnson and Carlos Villa. But first, let's run through some terms. And this is a slide that I developed after meeting Laura Green so many years ago, because we had this discussion as to what these terms mean. And for our case today, this is how I define them. So the MagLab is one of the missions is building a STEM workforce. And there are a number of ways in which we do that. And all of you play an amazing role in that. But one of the first is public engagement and public affairs with our amazing public affairs director, Kristen Roberts. This is what I define as developing trust and buy-in from taxpayers. That's everyone. And then we move into outreach. And the role of outreach, as I define it, is to excite folks about MagLab science. This is where Searle and public affairs often overlap, doing events that talk about MagLab science. This is how we start the spark of interest in the MagLab and interest in STEM careers. Then we move into what I would say is Searle's bread and butter is the role of education and mentoring. So how folks learn the skills necessary to become a scientist or engineer and see themselves belonging and succeeding in these fields. We do this work through our programs, but we also measure the success of these programs and our ability to do this through the evaluation that Carrie Roberts, the director of evaluation at the MagLab, does. And we inform our programs through research. And that research, because I'm the director of Searle, is focused on STEM identity, because that is my passion for research. I define STEM identity as one's sense of belonging and future success in STEM. And oftentimes folks will talk about identity has kind of gotten a bad rap in our political discourse. But if you think about who you are and what got you here as a scientist working at the MagLab, there's a sense of belonging that you feel for whatever career you're involved in. It may be part of your identity, or maybe you're such a well established human being that you have no attachment to anything. But most of the time we stay in these careers because we see ourselves there. And this leads to persistence in STEM fields, as well as perseverance within those fields. So Searle works to develop programs that support students to see themselves succeeding in STEM fields. And we start these programs as early as elementary school. A number of you have volunteered to go into classrooms. Carlos covers that if you can't. He is our expert in K through 12 science education. But we also have a number of publications that come out of Searle that focus on STEM identity at all ages, how we can develop stronger STEM identity at the elementary, middle, high school, college, all the way into careers. So before I go any further, I have to give credit to my amazing staff. Carlos Villa, as I already said, is our Director of K through 12 Education and Outreach. He is an expert in science education, developing curriculum, and working with our what we call informal STEM education programs. Those are anything outside of the formal classroom. So Girl summer camps, anytime you're mentoring students, we would call that learning, and it's in an informal science space. And I should say that Carlos Villa, shout out, just recently won the Tallahassee Scientific Society Gold Medal for his efforts in science education. And then Dr. Kwana Johnson, our mentoring director, who is about to start her first time running the REU program. So she is both excited and a little nervous to bring all of these new mentees into the MagLab, but we are really excited and supportive of her. Dr. Johnson also recently published a book on experiential learning, focusing on college internships. So if you're looking to pick her brain as an expert in that realm, feel free to stop by her office or email her. So none of this work that we do would be possible without scientists here at the MagLab. We need you. You are the link for these young people to see potential careers in STEM, and you help them realize what science careers can look like for them. Our research shows that building students' STEM identity requires them to meet and work with STEM professionals that look like them. Mentoring is a crucial part of building our STEM workforce and helping young people overcome the doubts or barriers that they might see to STEM persistence. Some of you in the audience, maybe you always saw STEM as the career for you and there was never a doubt. Others of you might have had doubts about that. And what we were talking about before we started the presentation today is, what are the stories you refer back to? What kept you in the field? And that's what we're trying to do here through Searle programs, through the mentoring programs we have. You are a potential story in a young person's head to go back to and say, you know what kept me in it? Ernesto Bosque, when he came to my classroom. Kaya Way, when she worked with me in the summer, he showed me that I belonged and I could do it. And you are all incredibly important in that story of identity development, just like their classroom teachers are, just like their parents are. And I'm not saying that to put pressure on anyone. I'm just saying you have so much value that you might not even realize. Alumni in our programs reference mentors and the role that they've had on fostering their interest in STEM and influencing their STEM career decisions. Most recently, our Momentum Scholars, the FAMU students that participated in the 6-week program that Kwana ran, all 14 of them said that they had not considered graduate school as an option. And after participating at the MagLab in a 6-week program, they all now were looking into it and considering it as an option. And many of them hadn't even thought of working at the MagLab as an option. And we're able to see that just by being in this space for 6 weeks with all of you. So just to give you a little smattering of what Searle does, I already mentioned our outreach events. One of the reasons, other than Yulia being a dear friend, but Yulia is the scientist who does all of our science nights at the local library. Carlos does not have to do anything for that. Yulia packs everything up, she goes, she plans. You don't have to be Yulia to be involved. You can ask Carlos for advice, but there are a number of opportunities for scientists to get involved for all ages and for all durations. And then Carlos obviously can work if there's something you think you want to work or present for a K-12 audience. He's the absolute expert for that. We also have our summer camps, Girls, Camp Tesla, Sci Girls Code. Those are all programs that sometimes, again, scientists and engineers, staff can test out ideas that you might have. You work with Carlos on, here's the time frame I want to use, here's what I'm thinking about doing, and you can test that activity in our summer camps. We also do pre-post surveys with our summer camps to see what influence the program had on them, focusing on if they met scientists, if it increased their understanding of what STEM careers are, and interest in STEM. And then we have a number of mentoring programs. Some of you are probably aware of this. Some of you, this might be brand new to you, but we have a middle school mentorship program. The entire fall, middle school students come every Friday. And I have to say, middle school is a tough age group for me. So those of you who work with middle school students, you are a special kind of person. But if you love that age group, because they are fun, they're testing out sense of humor at that age group, which is what makes it difficult for me. But we have a middle school mentorship program. We have high school externship programs that go the entire academic year. And then we have the Momentum Scholars program that I talked about with our FAMU college students. And then we have the research experience for undergraduates, as well as our research experience for teachers. But all of these give our scientists and staff an opportunity to work with any age group, as well as K through 12 teachers. We also do pre-post surveys with these programs and get mentor input on what worked, how we can improve, and how we can make the programs better. This is just kind of showing you, highlighting Yulia here, as well as some of the other opportunities. Obviously, pre-COVID times, as you see, everybody's close together and maskless. But these are the beginnings, the spark that then build on. Here's opportunities with our summer camps to kind of see what STEM looks like. They get to work on real relevant activities, asking questions that some of our scientists ask in a shorter time period. Carlos can also help you if you're like, well, how do I make it relevant? I don't know middle school students. I don't know what to do. Carlos is there to help with those activities and give you ideas about how to communicate it and best practices in that realm. And then for mentoring, if you haven't read, there's an executive summary, because the entire report, the National Academies, The Science of Effective Mentorship in STEM, the entire report's about 150 pages or more, but there's also a podcast and there's an executive summary, and it just stresses, I can summarize it for you. It just stresses how important mentoring is to building our STEM workforce. And oftentimes I talk to my colleagues at the MagLab and they're like, well, I'm not the official mentor on record because I'm not tenure track faculty or I don't serve in a department. But anytime you interact, in a couple of weeks, the user summer school is going to be here. That is mentoring. They will meet you. They will see potential careers. They will talk to you about what your daily life is like. That's the beginning of mentoring. You are showing them what a career in STEM looks like. You are showing them what the MagLab research looks like. The excitement of that, sometimes the disappointments, research is hard, but all of that is really crucial in giving them a true picture of what it could look like for them. And then we've also been trained, a number of us, but Kuana and I and Cyril have also been trained in the Center for the Improvement of Mentored Experiences in Research. CIMR comes out of the University of Wisconsin. This is a research program that trains mentors and mentees in how to improve communication, how to set expectations, how to develop various skills. And Kuana piloted a couple of those this past spring. She's going to do some more in the fall, so stay tuned to those emails. But these have all been researched and use case studies that also highlight experiences that folks at national labs like the MagLab might have with mentoring. I'm giving a quote, an amalgam of Maya Angelou and our NSF director, but this concept of we want folks to thrive, not just survive in STEM. I know that a historical concept was you got to get through, you got to survive, but what if we reinvented it as thriving? And one of those is ensuring that anyone from any background and from any part of the country who has the aspiration and talent to go into a STEM career is given the opportunity and provided the support to do so. And Cyril does that through our programs, the MagLab, through the Diversity Committee. We provide financial support in some cases, but we also provide mentoring and programs that provide that access and support as well. This is a summary through our current NSF renewal proposal grant. This gives you some demographics. I've highlighted the college section because the story I want to tell there is if you were aware, the representation of the representation within the STEM workforce for African Americans is 3%. 3% of the STEM workforce is African American, whereas they are 12% of the entire US population. For Hispanics represent 4% of the STEM workforce and 16% of the US population. Women represent 50% of the US population and 24% of the STEM workforce. So that's what we talk about when we mention underrepresented minorities in STEM fields. And I wanted to highlight this because college is when we're starting to divvy up into these career trajectories, majors, if you will. And I wanted to highlight that our college programs are doing fairly well in terms of representation. They're more than what is currently in STEM, and we're working towards the US population to provide access and opportunity. This highlights some of the research we've done. Our research is really focused on, it not only drives the best practices for our programs, but for programs nationally. We focus on how informal STEM education programs can influence STEM identity development, how the culture of STEM impacts STEM identity development. And as Yulia mentioned, this expertise has allowed us to be part of multiple grants, including an NSF Advancing Informal Science Learning, or ASIL grant, with the Sci Girls National Organization. And most recently, I and Amy McKenna and Tim Murphy were also part of an NSF Convergence Accelerator grant that was focused on quantum education. So again, in conclusion, I have 2 more slides and I'm in the dark now. I have to stand up, so I'll do that when we move to questions, but we are here to help. A number of you are working on, I saw Christiane Beekman here, one of our NSF career awardees. But some of you, maybe even beyond the NSF career grant, maybe there's a grant that you're looking at, if it's NSF or another that requires some kind of educational component or broader impact. We are here to help. And Carlos can help you develop if you want to work with the K through 12 age group. Kawana can help advise you on mentoring programs, including not just for undergraduates, but for graduate students and postdocs. We'd love to have opportunities to maybe develop an idea that maybe we don't have the funding or the resources for, and your grant can help us to do that. So together we can really make a difference. This was just to kind of summarize for you what Searle does and what we can do for all of you, and would love to do to work as partners together to continue to build the STEM workforce. And I will close it there with our final slide. So I'll open it up and stand up to turn on my light, Yulia, if you want to open it up for questions.
Thank you, Roxanne, for this nice presentation and sharing those insights with us. As the discussion leader, I take the liberty of the first question. So I'd like to ask you, Roxanne, so for me as a researcher, if I'm working on a grant, what specifically is it that Searle can mean for me? What can you do for me in writing that grant?
Sure. So I, and many of you in the audience probably know, I'm not a last minute type person. So I love working with people and I love discussing ideas, but my team needs time to do that. So coming with like more than a month at the very least to talk to us, and you can come and you might not even know what age group you want to work with, but you can tell us a little bit about what you're researching currently. Dr. Jamel Ali in the College of Engineering has done that. He told us about his research, and then we told him, here are the options. Here's what would be a cool opportunity to do with maybe the middle school age. You could do it with a middle school mentee, or you could take it into a classroom. We can connect you with teachers if you want to work with high school teachers, or if you want to test it out in a classroom space. Or you might, Christiane Beekman came and talked to us, and her idea was something that was more in the science communication realm. And then she ended up talking to public affairs about that. But it's just a conversation around, here's what my research is. No one would expect you to be the expert on K through 12 education or broader impacts. And as a team, the diversity of our ideas and expertise makes us stronger and would just make the grant stronger.
Great, thank you. Questions for Roxanne? A couple of hands up earlier. I hope I didn't steal the only question there.
So I guess I'll just point out one thing is that many of us have been on a lot of review panels for NSF, especially where this is so important, where broader impacts are important. And I've seen proposals not make it because their broader impact section was not really out of the ordinary. So I think for a lot of you, you're aware of what's going on, what Roxanne and her team at Cyril do. But if you're not aware of this, this is an incredibly valuable resource. And my friends at other national laboratories and even universities are pretty jealous of this. So, so I would really recommend spending some time learning more, but it's a fantastic website.
All right, I see Christiana has a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually, I also just want to say thank you so much for all the things that you've done, or that Carlos and others have done in the past. I think they were instrumental in getting an excellent broader impacts and educational plan together for my career grant that got funded. So, but that was, you know, not my question, it's a comment. So I just saw your table, and it's, if I read it correctly, in the college section, you had over 50% representation of women, but that's clearly dropping very dramatically after undergrad. So what is your opinion on the causes for this? How do we keep these women in these programs after they graduate, hopefully with a bachelor's degree or something like that?
I love having the mic for this. Thank you, Christiane. So one thing, the fewer women choose to major in STEM going into undergraduate. So we've already lost them between high school and college. And then the attrition rate's pretty similar to men. So once in college, so one of the ways that an APS is doing this with the Step Up grant, which is focused on trying to increase the number of high school girls who find physics interesting and go major in it in college. But that's one area where we need to kind of increase the number of women. Then in college, and this is the same for, I would say, men and women, the structure of college STEM courses. And I will give a shout out for FSU, the Center for Teaching Excellence, Leslie Richardson's program, really works with a number of our teaching faculty in various STEM disciplines on how to make those less weed out, is the word that I will use. So those of us who are from a certain generation and majored in STEM, remember first day of class where the professor says, look to your right, look to your left, 2 of you won't be here at the end of this semester or end of this 4 years. The idea is that it's not just the K through 12 teacher's responsibility. We all have a responsibility to meet students where they're at. One of the lessons that predominantly white institutions can learn from is from historically Black colleges and universities. Those schools really focus on whatever level you came in at, we're going to meet you there and we're going to get you to graduation with that. And it's focused on the whole person, not just you're a face in my, physics class right now. It's really working on how do we bring the whole person and engage them in something that's relevant and let them look at aspects of STEM that are relevant to them, even if they're not the major part of the class. Then if they still stay in past the undergraduate year, graduate school's rough. It's a tough concept. And we lose folks there. For women, that often also, not only is it tough, but it's also at a time period where women might be choosing to have children. And sometimes our graduate school is not as supportive of that. I think that is changing for both fathers and mothers at this point, but it's very similar for postdocs as well. And I think that what has to happen is we all need to see what role we can play in it. So not just say, well, that's just for, K through 12 teachers to worry about. They need to get them to this level so that they can take my organic chem class. It's like, how do I meet folks when they're there? And another recent study that looked at, that came out of APS, it was focused on the team up reports that APS has done. And if you're wondering about these reports, I'm happy to share them. Folks know that I love to send reading material. But if you are interested in the team up report, it's also looking at, sometimes we think we're being supportive and we're recognizing folks by saying, hey, maybe physics isn't the right place for you. Like maybe it's teaching, or maybe it's this. And you might be recognizing that they exist and you've thought enough about them to sway them in this way. But what that tells them is that they don't belong in physics. And maybe they are failing every course, but maybe there's other ways in which we can show them that there's opportunities for them. One of which is including the RU program. I talk to folks at the MagLab. A lot of folks see the RU program as this is for the top student, the student that can come in and doesn't need much handholding. And others see it as an opportunity to introduce a student who might not be the best student. That's up to all of the mentors to decide. But research experiences are one way to support. Maybe the student was a C student, but then they do REU and they realize their passion, and then they are motivated then to buckle down and get those grades. So any of these opportunities, even just to bring them into your lab, students into your lab, even if it's not a research experience, you don't have to mentor for 10 weeks. You could just bring them into your lab for a tour. And that makes a huge difference just to see outside of studying a textbook. So thanks, Christina, I appreciate it.
Other questions for Roxanne? All right, last call.
I'm trying to leave room for other people to talk, but you know I can't help it, Roxanne. I think the research on STEM identity, I really did try, but I think the research on STEM identity is so interesting. And I wonder if you're noticing that it takes more exposure for students, like modern students, to have a connection with STEM identity. As a parent, I feel like the expectation for students to align with a thing, for them to identify with it, has just become, I don't know, on steroids. It's amped up to 11. And I wondered if your research is showing this too. I mean, I sense it in like dance. My daughter dances 4 hours a week, but she doesn't think of herself as a dancer because these girls dance like 14 hours a week. And I wonder what that means for the STEM environment, if you could talk about that a little bit in your research.
I don't know if I'll answer the question directly, Kristen, but I know you'll find me to have this conversation after. But there's also an issue in how we define STEM. So some of my research has followed up with alumni of our programs, and these are Sci girls who are now grown women. And when I ask them what their career is, they might be an elementary school teacher and they still love science, but they don't consider themselves a STEM person. Part of that is also funding agencies. NSF only funds certain STEM fields, and those are seen as STEM. We have term hard sciences and soft sciences. But just anecdotally, I do find it worrying that we force middle school and elementary school students to kind of develop their career path. As many of you who are probably in this audience, we might, as adults, still not know what we want to do for our career. Like we might be at that point, at a point of transition now even. And I will say actually that the best conversation I had recently in this realm was with Theo Seacrest. I don't know if he's on the call, but we were talking, he was saying that he thinks drama is such a great interdisciplinary thing for students to get involved in, because you have to use all of those. You have to be able to communicate. Even if you're backstage, you have to learn communication skills. You learn the science and math as you're on the go of setting up the stage, even if you're acting. And it involves working with all of these people from different walks of life. And we silo it so much in education with like chemistry, physics, physical science, in higher education with physics departments, chemistry departments. It makes it hard for even us as like people in this career. I think the MagLab is such a great place because we are so interdisciplinary, where Christiane is just across the hall from me and we can talk about these things. And it's not siloed in that realm, but it's so difficult because students feel like they need to do that. Whereas what some of the things that might be keeping them from doing it is the siloed nature of STEM. Like STEM is only this. This is what I see in the media. This is what I see from my one example, which might be my physics teacher or my chemistry teacher. And they don't get to see the wide, diverse variety of personalities and disciplines. And we lock them in even before college. They might have never met a physicist before college.
There's another question from Dimitri. Go ahead, Dimitri.
Hi, first question, do you hear me well? Because I'm joining you through cell phone.
I hear you.
Yes, we hear you.
Yeah, that's a great cell service.
Okay, very good. I want to ask a question, or rather say comment. My favorite group is middle school. I love to work with middle school students. And I hope it's truly altruistic. I'm just paying back. Because at teen ages, I was infected with this virus of love for science and math due to some excellent teachers and tutors. So I do it because I'm paying back. But when I tried to include this in my NSF proposals, I actually got punished. And I understand the reviewer's point of view. He said at this age, students cannot contribute to the proposed research. And they're right. So do you have an idea how? Because honestly, it's impossible to propose some serious research-related subject to middle school students.
Ryan's got his hand raised. So
I just want to interject and say that I have heard some truly insane things from referees about broader impacts. Sometimes I think they have no idea what they're talking about, and that's all.
I would say, Dimitri, you could develop, middle school students actually can. Carlos has a number of alumni who have gone on to publish, who have gone on to use their middle school mentorship project for science fair. And then on Scott Hannes is like, Scott, I know he also tells us some of these things. There are some projects and they absolutely can. I think that referee just has a really poor opinion of the level of abilities of middle school students. So we would be happy to talk to you and provide you with some data that shows what our middle school students are capable of for that. Absolutely, they're definitely wrong. High school students, the same thing to folks. And shout out to Dimitri because he's a wonderful mentor with our middle school students. And they are a very fun age and they
very
are
fun,
very smart. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, other questions for Roxanne? Okay, then I pass this back to Laura.
Well, thank you, Roxanne. Thank you, Julia. This was tremendous. Keep checking out the websites and share the good news, the good word about all this great work that's done there and with us here. So thank you for attending, and this will be online for anybody that wants to see it again. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.